Hi everybody, this is Dino Chris from Prehistoric Facts. This is a special episode, and the dinosaur that we'll be talking about today is Supersaurus. Now, Supersaurus is actually a sauropod or long-necked dinosaur from the late Jurassic period, probably around, like, say, 155 to 145 million years ago. And it's found in North America, of course. Mainly fossils have been found in Utah and Colorado, and and the length of this animal is just outstanding, approximately 110 feet long. It's an amazing length, and weight is probably around 50 tons. Now, interesting enough for Supersaurus is that it's probably one of the biggest dinosaurs that actually has lived during that time, and and for the predators around there, you had Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, possibilities of Saurophaganax and Torvosaurus. Those would be the main predators of Supersaurus, but that's only if the Supersaurus is actually a juvenile, and juveniles are usually the ones that are most in danger from predators like Allosaurus and Torvosaurus, and possibility of Saurophaganax. But of course, like all sauropods, it eats plants, and during the time of the Jurassic period, it actually lived in pretty much into two kinds of seasons. There's wet and dry, and then the dry season, it's very scarce it's going to be very scarce to find food and water. But what happens in the wet season is then you actually have the rains that come, torrential monsoons that come in, and just start actually giving the water that is needed for the plants, and also the rivers and lakes and even the ponds. And so pretty much the sauropods would actually can go for a good period of time without water and food. It's because you see they're big enough to actually pretty much just travel long distances without eating a lot of food, and pretty much but with Supersaurus, since its closest cousins are actually Apatosaurus and Diplodocus, these dinosaurs are probably more likely to eat like the low-lying plants that are actually in between, like the trees and all that kind of stuff, because there was no grass during the time of the dinosaurs, so it would have been more likely to eat more like ferns and cycads and pretty much just eat like soft leaves. That's pretty much what they ate. Now, did they actually have stones in their stomachs? That's always going to be a question for that. For sauropods, is that did they really swallow stones so that they can actually store them in their stomach so that they can actually grind the food in the stomach? And that's been a question that's been going around for years now, is whether or not these dinosaurs actually use stones to help grind their food in their stomachs. That's always going to be a question. I think at times they do, but it's more likely that they just probably used the stomach acid that they actually have in their stomach to actually help them digest those plants much easier than when it was in this trying to actually have the stones do all the work for them. Because also some of those stones could actually be actually part in the animal's feces too. We would have seen like stones in the feces of the fossilized feces of sauropods, and we haven't seen anything like that. So it's rare to find anything like this. But even though we do find the stones in their stomachs at times, but that's probably more likely either that some of the stones get washed in to the rib cage and scientists thought that they actually did eat stones, or otherwise they did eat the stones, but they just been staying in their stomachs for a long period of time. And pretty much I think sauropods can live a pretty good long life, considering that that they actually do kind of get bigger as they get older. We can't really say what the height of Supersaurus is. There's not a lot of fossils that have been found of Supersaurus. There's been like a few vertebrae, few other bones. I don't think they ever. I don't know if they ever found the skull of Supersaurus. I'm not totally sure because they always say that its closest relatives are Apatosaurus and Diplodocus. So it's always going to be interesting to find out what this animal really did look like during its time in the Jurassic. Of course, the extinction of Supersaurus was pretty much just not enough available food, and also the changing of the climate. Changing of the climate would always be category number 1 for this kind of extinction during the late Jurassic, when we actually see like an abundance of animals just going extinct, and we don't even know what the cause was. I mean, that's always going to be enemy number 1 is climate change, and that's always going to be a big concern. But also, there's always the theory that they were victims of their own success, which is kind of odd to say, but I mean, figures that new sauropods came in and actually just took advantage of the other food sources that Supersaurus couldn't even reach. And then also you have new predators come in, and also the newer predators would actually been able to probably have better brains than the predators that Supersaurus was actually used to. So that's pretty much how I think Supersaurus probably went extinct. But I did actually get a question here for this, and I'll actually do answer this question from John from South Sioux City, Nebraska, and he says, my question is, do you know if there have been any CAT scans on Velociraptor's head or skull? Well, John, I can actually say this. I actually did look this up. It did seem like they did actually do CT scans on the skull of Velociraptor, but I think they couldn't actually try to get the image of the brain case, because I think for whatever reason, I think they actually chosen a skull that looked like it was pretty good, but then the brain case, it was just crushed, so it would have been just crushed by the fossilization. And smaller skulls are more likely to get crushed by the rocks during the time of fossilization. And so I think what happened was that they tried to see if they can get an image of the brain, and they just couldn't even get anything out of it. That's just always going to be a problem when we're actually trying to CAT scan smaller dinosaur skulls, and that's always going to be a problem, is whether or not these brain cases are actually really intact, or are they just totally crushed, and we just can't get a really good definitive look at the brain. And I mean, some of the raptor dinosaurs, the dromaeosaurs, do have brain cases that are actually pretty much well intact, and that we can actually possibly figure out what the brain probably looked like for the dromaeosaurs or the raptors. So that would actually be my good theory of this, is that they just probably just use like other brain cases of dromaeosaurs and looked at the other the CT scans of the brain case, and then they actually just probably took a good look at the possibly of a rough draft image of the brain, and that's pretty much, I think, what's happened. So I tried looking for that, and I mean, there's not enough there on like the internet to actually see if there was any CAT scans on the brain, CAT scans on the skull of Velociraptor, because the only ones I know are actually the sauropods, the tyrannosaurs, the allosaurs, some dromaeosaurs, and some of the ankylosaurs too, and hadrosaurs were the ones that actually got the their skulls looked at, the most smaller dinosaurs are just very, very fragile, and also the bones are just so fragile that fossilization has been able to crush the brain case for a pretty good period of time. And so that's all I can say, is that there's not a lot there for the Velociraptor skull. If they actually find a complete skull that actually has an intact brain case, then they might actually be able to actually see what the brain might look like for a Velociraptor. Alright, that's it for now. Now this coming Saturday's episode will be an answering questions episode, so if you got a question, make sure to email it to me at dinocris71@gmail.com, or otherwise you can leave it on the comment section of every post that I put on my Facebook fan page, Prehistoric Facts with Dino Chris. You can actually send in your question by leave your question on the comment section, and make sure to leave where you're from on there, so that way I can actually know who it is and actually where they're from. And also, you can follow me on Twitter at CSGrall. It's just at symbol CSGRALL, and you can actually follow me on Twitter, and I do post some cool stuff on Twitter. And also to make sure to take care of the people around you, and also for you younger people out there, make sure to listen to your parents, your teachers, and your guardians. Those are the best motivation you can have for a good education. It's very important to have a good education. And you know what? I'll be going back to college pretty soon, and for spring semester, and hopefully everything is going to be good as planned. And hey, just keep on doing the show in college too. So keep on, just keep on rolling. And so I'll see you guys this coming Saturday.